Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's budget consultation event. My name's Abby. I'm based in the communications team here. Before I welcome our various councillors who will be sharing the proposals with you, I'd just like to talk you through how the live stream will work. Can you see the Q&A button? If you could please submit your questions in the Q&A button, we'll come to those later. If for whatever reason your computer is running slow, don't worry, pause and the live stream will catch up later. If you have any other technical problems, don't worry, you can click back on the link at any time and watch the session back. And even if for whatever reason you haven't got the time to join the whole session, pop your question in the chat. We'll come to it later and you can watch it back at another time. I'd first like to welcome our leader, Councillor Mary-Ann Brocklesby. Morning, Mary-Ann. I think you're on mute.
I am.
Thank you.
That was a classic mistake. I'm sorry. Good morning, everyone. My name's Mary-Ann Brocklesby and I'm leader of Monmouthshire County Council, and I'm absolutely delighted that you've come and joined us and made an effort to do so. We really want to hear your opinions. For us, this budget is one that we want as maximum consultation as we can, so that we can ensure that your views are taken into account and represented in the final budget that we will put to council on March the 9th. I'm going to hand you over to Councillor Rachel Garrett, who is leading all our processes and deliberations on the budget. Good morning, Rachel.
Morning, Mary-Ann. Morning, everybody. I'm Rachel Garrick. I'm one of the councillors down in Caldecott, and I'm the Cabinet Member for Resources, which means the budget's my responsibility. I'll be taking you through the budget today, what our proposals are, and I'm looking forward to listening to your feedback and questions as well. So we've got a few of our Cabinet colleagues on the line with us today, and I'm going to hand you over to my colleague Martin.
Morning, everybody. I hope you find this morning's session very helpful. I'm Martin Croker. I'm a county councillor in Abergavenny, and I am the Cabinet Member responsible for education. I'm going to hand you now to my colleague Sarah.
Morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Sarah Birch. I'm the Cabinet Member for Inclusive and Active Communities, which is housing, leisure, mon life and community safety.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Angela Sandals. I'm a county councillor for Meagher East and Endy, and I'm a Cabinet job share for engagement, which includes looking after our libraries and hubs and refugees and communications, really. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We're now going to hand back to Councillor Rachel Garrick to hear the presentation. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you very much, Abby. I am not on mute, am I, at this stage? Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so when we talk about the budget, it's important that we understand the context and the environment that we're setting the budget in. 2022 financially has been a really unprecedented year. And I keep using that word around our budget, but essentially we've not seen financial pressures in the history of Monmouthshire County Council at this level before. We've had spiralling inflation over the past year at a rate that we've not seen since the 1970s. And there's several things that have also pushed into that. So we talk about Brexit. Costs of raw materials and food have gone up after leaving the European Union. The pandemic itself has left us with an increasing amount of pressure on areas such as our social care and housing areas. We've got OPEC Plus set oil prices at a very high level. Well, they didn't set the prices, they set oil production at a very low level, which drove up oil prices. And then the war in Ukraine also spiraled into gas prices. And we've also got a job market that's very, very difficult for us as a council. We employ a lot of carers, and a lot of those people are earning real living wage, and it's a very competitive market for that. So what we're seeing is people looking to travel less and to increase their earnings because they're suffering from the cost of living crisis as well. So we're really struggling for recruitment and retention, and that job market is getting very competitive. So what I'm going to do is try to, by the magic of Teams, share my content. So bear with me. It looks like I cannot do this and share my speaker notes, unfortunately. So we've talked about the context. Let's talk about what that means for us. It adds up to about just over £26 million of pressures on the council. That means to run the council in the same way that we've done in 2022, it's going to cost us another £26 million. When we break that down, that's an £11.9 million increase in what it costs us to run our services. But we also have a £4.5 million increase in energy costs. And pay awards, where we need to pay people a real living wage and keep track with the cost of living, means that we've got a pressure of £7 million. We also have treasury costs. They're at about £3.2 million, and that's about servicing loans that the council has borrowed, for instance, for its capital programme. So I think one of the frequent questions I see asked or hear asked is, what does the council spend its money on? This is a breakdown of broadly where we spend our money. So what you will see here is that we spend the largest part of our expenditure on children and young people. That's 32% of the money that we spend in a year. And for 22 to 23, we forecast that to be £59 million. Hot on the heels of that, at 31%, is social care and health. That's earmarked for a £58.4 million spend. There's a large drop after children and young people and social care and health into the communities in place. So this is all about the services that you see around you, that you use as council users beyond your schools, social care, caring for our residents, and that's 13% at 24.1 million. And it goes down to a range of other costs as well. So let's talk about where those pressures come when I say that we've got £11.9 million worth of pressures where it'll cost us more to run our services next year. Sorry, it's this year, isn't it? We're in 2023 now, it's February. So adult social care has an increase of £1.8 million associated with it. So that's increases in people needing care. We're seeing people coming through after having suffered from COVID, needing additional care. We've got a community in Monmouthshire that's older than the national average, and as a result, there is more pressure on our social care services for our older residents. We have real living wage implications, and that's £1 million. And again, we're committed to paying the people that work for us and provide services to you as residents a real living wage so they can afford to live their lives as well. We've seen a change in Welsh Government policy on homelessness, and that included a legislative change during COVID. That was designed to make sure that people aren't living on the streets. And while it's a very good piece of legislation, it does mean that councils who may not have previously done everything that they could have for homelessness do now need to provide additional support to homelessness. And to give you an idea of where that gap was for somebody who was facing homelessness, it's going to cost us a £1.9 million increase in supporting people. A lot of that is going literally into housing people in temporary accommodation while we try to find full-time accommodation for them. We're also seeing an increase in children with additional learning needs budget. That's £600,000. That's where we're seeing more children coming into the system with additional learning needs, and also we're identifying children on a wider age range of additional learning needs. So that increases the work that we're doing there. I talked about increasing prices such as raw materials and fuel. So our recycling and waste, and a lot of that is transit, is increasing by £200,000 in cost in 2023 to 2024. We're also seeing a slight fall in our income from recycling and waste processing. We run a significant passenger transport and fleet, which is principally around home to school transport. And again, costs increase primarily around fuel and across the costs of maintenance and of fleet itself. That's totaling another £600,000 additionally on our base estimations for the next financial year. We've then got income shortfalls where we spend more money than providing a service than we bring in. And and we've also got anticipated income. So, for instance, with our Mon Life service that provides leisure centres, we've seen a drop in our anticipated uptake of memberships after COVID. We think people are spending time more exercising as they did during the pandemic and during lockdown, where they're looking at outside sports that they've taken up and are continuing with. That's given us an £800,000 shortfall. We're also looking at community safety, and our estimates show that we're expecting an extra £100,000 there in terms of what it will cost us to run community safety services over 2023 to 2024. Sorry, I forgot we had a slight fly-in on this slide. Our biggest outlay and increase that we're seeing is in social care for children over the next year. We've got that estimated at £4.4 million. It's a really complex area, which is quite volatile, and it can rapidly increase over the year. We've seen that in the last year, where a significant part of the council shortfall that developed over the last year was connected with social care for children. So, all that said, with that doom and gloom, we still need to balance our budget. So I've already said that it's going to cost us 26 million. It's actually 26.6 million to run our services next year. That's not 26.6 million to run all of our service. That's simply the increase of how much it will cost us. So that's a 14% increase. And when you look at inflation and RPI, that's about the rate of inflation. So we have got some income increases coming in, and that's £15.7 million, or about 7.5%. So we've still got a 6.5% gap on the increase of what it's going to cost us. That income increase comes from the government grant, so the settlement from Welsh Government that we received to run our council, that accounts for about 2/3 of our income. And then council tax will also bring in increases as well. And we're also looking to set fair prices for our charges for discretionary services, which means we will be asking residents to pay more towards market value on those. You'll see some councils across Wales talking about using reserves to cover some of this gap. Unfortunately, we've got the 3rd lowest level of reserves in Wales. So we're holding low reserves, and it's difficult to use those to plug that gap. What we're doing is earmarking a large part of reserves to hold in contingency for risks that could get realised as further costs emerge throughout the year. So we've essentially found £15.7 million of income against 26.6 million. If you're there with your calculator or you like your mental arithmetic, that leaves us £11.4 million excess in increased costs. So we've had to look at savings in order to bridge that gap, and that needs to be done within the funding of our services and service changes. So let's go through some of these proposals. When I say we're going through these proposals, I want to be clear that as a Labour administration, we really are committed to policy and priority-led approaches. We as a cabinet have sat down and have for days and days and days on end gone through every line item on our budget proposals, every different saving, every service change, every proposal to save everything, discussed it and made a decision on whether we think that our residents in Monmouthshire can tolerate those changes given the task at hand and the fact that we do still need to make savings. We are committed to a fair Monmouthshire that's a great place to live, and we are committed to ensuring that the most vulnerable amongst our residents are protected. So we have done a rigorous challenge process, and these are the savings that we feel that we can bring to our residents. That said, they are significant savings. We do need to make changes because we do have to find £11.4 million of savings across our activities as a council. So let's go through the high-level summary. We'll be increasing school budgets next year by 5%. Looking at school budgets, we appreciate that we still need to get 2.8% efficiency savings out of those. So there's still a gap of 2.8% on what schools believe they need to run in the same way that we believe we need 26 million to run. We've all done our financial planning, and that's where we're looking to be. We're expecting schools, each school gets an individual school budget, and we're expecting those schools to use their reserves and to moderate their financial planning in a way to bridge that gap. But there's still a gap in where we need to make savings in the children and young people's budget. You remember that that is 52% of our council budget. So we're still looking for about £300,000 worth of savings outside of the individual school budgets. So we've looked at these are our principal areas. So Monmouthshire is the last council in Gwent to fully subsidise the Gwent Music Service. So that's a service that teaches our children to play instruments and continue our heritage of being a musical and creative nation. And we thoroughly believe that that should be supported. So coming in line here with other councils throughout Gwent and reducing our subsidy for Gwent Music Service. But that means Gwent Music Service will still be available and it should be able to continue. We may see some reduction in class-based provision, and Gwent Music may need to charge parents slightly more for their children's school lessons. What we are doing is, again, and we understand that music is a large part of Wales's heritage and culture, is we're maintaining a fund to support children from low-income families to be able to continue with music lessons. We're also committed to school breakfasts. We run school breakfasts throughout the county, and every child that needs or wants a breakfast is able to obtain a free breakfast at school through our breakfast clubs. However, we do charge at this moment a small fee, and it's very subsidised, for the childcare element for children who stay for childcare as well as breakfast. At the moment, that's £1 a session. We're proposing that that increases to £2. For contrast, if I use an after-school session for my children, that's about £6.95 for the same level of wraparound care. So it's still providing a very subsidised service for parents for wraparound childcare to enable them to start work. We're also looking at reduced staffing levels within the school psychology service, principally around posts that haven't been filled over some time. We'll be pursuing grant funding to try and bridge that gap, and that grant funding will also be pursued for a support service for children with additional learning needs. Moving on, we're going to talk about social care. So again, we'll be increasing the social care budget here. We'll be increasing adult social care by 1 million and children's services, which is social care, by 3.4 million. And you'll remember, if you go back, it was a 4.4 million additional pressure for children's services. So, while we're increasing adult social care, it still means that there is a funding gap on what we expect would be needed to run those services at the same level as they run in 22. So we're looking at needing a £2 million gap in adult social care. So what we're doing is investing and promoting services which are designed to prevent adults needing to come into care. So we're looking at fall prevention services. We're also looking at reviewing our care packages, making sure that they're fit for purpose and driving efficiencies through that. In terms of children's services, we're increasing by 3.4 million, but we still need 1.4 million of proposed savings there. So what we're doing there is reviewing our service delivery and looking to implement a more cost-effective service. A lot of that will be focused around how we deliver some of the high needs places, which are very, very expensive. And we feel there are some significant efficiencies that can be made in the way that we provide care within children's services compared to adult social services, where there is more efficiency in that area. We're also looking at a further £300,000 saving, which is proposed to be brought about for remodelling our learning disability and mental health teams. We're going to be focusing on providing local provision for young people with learning disabilities, and a lot of those savings are about changing supervisory approaches to those mental health teams rather than the services themselves. Moving on, you may be aware that we run Mon Life as a service, and that's our leisure and cultural service. So that supports things such as Caldecott Castle, which is in my ward, our leisure centres, etc. Now, I mentioned earlier that we saw a significant income gap from Mon Life over 2022, where people aren't taking up membership of our gyms and leisure centres in the same way. So we've had to give quite a significant increase of 22% for Mon Life, but we're still looking to make savings here. And again, this is a much smaller service compared to the children and young people's budget or the social care budget, which means that at 22% is much smaller in terms of financial outlay. And we're still looking to make a range of savings through Mon Life. So we're looking at £600,000 worth of savings in Mon Life. However, that's going to have some impact on our staffing levels and our opening hours. However, going back to our commitments, we're committed to making Monmouthshire a place that is good for our residents. And that includes a place that's got a focus on wellbeing as well. And we're determined that we're not going to be shutting our leisure centres and our swimming pools. What you will see is some analysis of footfall and hours. So you may see a contraction of hours, and that will be based on when our leisure centres are used and when they're less used. And we'll be looking at perhaps closing facilities at quiet times when they're getting less used to essentially bridge that savings gap. You might be familiar with our Nature Isn't Neat programme, or our No Mow May programme as well. So you'll see that we increase biodiversity throughout the council area, throughout the county, by allowing nature to take its course in the early months of spring and summer. And that is really very much focused on increasing biodiversity in the area, which is something that we're aware has been lost across the country over the years. So we're reducing our mowing schedule, which will increase biodiversity. It will increase our Nature Isn't Neat programme, so you won't be seeing the clipped sides to roads and hedgerows that you may be used to, but that will reduce costs as well. We're also looking to where else we can save costs in terms of maintenance. So we're looking at a £1.3 million saving, and that's on maintenance of the buildings throughout the council's asset portfolio and our vehicles. So we're looking at essentially doing essential maintenance only on buildings for this year. And in terms of vehicles, we're looking to reduce our energy consumption and our mileage to reduce our running costs. And we're also looking at rationalising our property estate to make sure that we're not heating it extensively and considering whether perhaps we might need the entirety of that estate. So, even with those changes in services, we still have a gap. So we provide a range of discretionary services to our residents, which we believe are of a benefit to our residents and our county. However, with inflation and the need to be able to continue to provide services, we're going to be asking residents to pay a fair price for the services that we provide. So you will see increases such as green waste and in parking fees throughout the county. We've also got a focus on making sure that our community hubs and libraries remain open. We believe they're fundamentally important to our communities and run a range of services, including the provision of books and way beyond those, that are really important to our communities. However, we do need to make savings. So rather than shutting a library, we'll be again analysing the times that libraries are open, when they have the least footfall, and looking to contract the hours there and to keep them closed in quiet times to save money for the county. We're also looking to reduce the number of people that we employ through the contact centre. So when you run the council, you may need to wait a little longer for somebody to be able to answer the phone. Those savings there will come to about £300,000. So we talked about the savings. I talked earlier about the income that we bring. We've had an increase from Welsh Government of about 9.3%, I believe, and in our grant that is provided by Welsh Government, which is good. That provides about a third of our income for the council. Council tax provides about 2/3. Council tax provides about a third of our steady income. So we've done our financial planning, and that informs how much we need to do. We've looked at where we can make savings in terms of reducing services, changing services, making savings within services. We've looked at where discretionary services may provide further income. And then our last piece of income is our council tax. So the remainder of the gap we've looked at, and we feel that the most fair price to do that, to bridge that gap, given where we've landed, and this is very much needed to bridge that gap, is a 5.95% increase for residents for council tax. So that's significantly below inflation. And again, it provides those funds for service delivery. And of course, we maintain our council tax reduction scheme, which gives support for low-income households to ensure that they aren't adversely affected by those increases. So 5.95% is, unless you're carrying your council tax bill around with you, doesn't necessarily mean a lot. I'm awfully sorry, my voice is going. I'm aware that I'm croaking at this point. So what does that actually mean to our residents. I'll move this up here so you can see. So the average person in Monmouthshire and in most counties lives in a Band D household. So for a Band D householder, their council tax increase is equivalent to £1.69 per week, or £7.32 per month, and that's based on a 12-month payment schedule. I'm very sorry. I seem to have lost the ability to move this forward. There we go. So I've talked to you about the savings. I've talked to you about how much it's going to cost us to run the council. I've talked to you about what that means in terms of residents, in terms of the changes you'll see, and in terms of the charges, including council tax. That's not quite everything. We need to appreciate that all budgets carry risk. So I came into Cabinet in May this year after a change in administration. The council budget for the year is set in March, and so the budget that we have is inherited from the previous administration. The levels of pressures, and remember that I said this year has been an unprecedented year in terms of finances, meant that this year's budget saw over £9 million worth of risk realised within 4 months. So by month 4, we were already looking at a £9 million shortfall for the budget for last year. So it gives you an impression of how easily risks can be realised and actually arise as additional costs for the council. And again, this is an unprecedented year. We genuinely believe, well, we don't genuinely believe, we know, looking at financial forecasts, looking at the way things are, that inflation is likely to start to dip over the next year. And we're confident that those risks are less likely to appear. So we're holding £3 million of those reserves. Remember, I've talked about the dwindling reserve situation earlier. We're holding £3 million of reserves to cover risks that we expect to potentially arise over the next financial year. Sorry, I am now struggling. Here we go. Brilliant. I also need to talk to you about the capital programme. So our capital programme provides us maintenance and enhancements of our estate. So that's our buildings, our lands, our asset base, so our roads, our schools, our leisure centres, all the maintenance around these. So it's important that we continue to support that. So we'll be continuing to support our capital plan, and we'll be looking to develop it to tackle longer term challenges that our communities are facing. And again, remember, this is the down year. This is the year where we have the large shortfall. And again, it's the largest amount of cost pressures that we've seen in the history of this county council. We fully anticipate that we will be able to do more with our budgets in future years. Essentially, our biggest outlays for this financial year is the investment that we're making into our new age 3 to 19 school in Abergavenny and our new care home that we're building in Crick Road. That's all right. And this is just finally a page to tell you how we're doing in our consultation. So we've been going on consultation now since mid-January. This is my first live stream with you. I'll be doing another one this evening. I've travelled to almost every population centre in the county. I'm going to Abergavenny next week to round that off. And I'll be doing some other virtual events, some other events as well with particular community groups. I've given you an overview of where we are today. We also have a budget page on our council website, and that includes an online survey. And as Marianne said earlier, we genuinely want your opinion. This is an unprecedented year, and this is your council. And we want people's opinions of how these changes affect them and how they feel about them. We're also open to suggestions. Going forward, I don't just get to land a budget. I've been going through scrutiny meetings with these set of proposals, and then we'll review and put together a final budget, which will go to full council, I believe, on the 2nd of March. And that will include the setting of council tax for the community as well. And with that, I am going to stop this presentation and hand over to questions. Abby, am I coming back to you for questions?
Yes, please. Thank you, Councillor Garrick. I will start with the pre-submitted questions, if that's okay, please. Thank you so much, Charles Smith, for submitting 2 questions. So I'll take these one at a time, if that's okay. So the first is, I would like to know the management structure of the council. Also, if the number of managers is being reduced. Streamlining is essential. We can no longer support a non-effective organisation. Who would like to respond to that, please?
Well, I think resources are under my portfolio, so I think, sorry, it's me talking a little bit more, and I'm awfully sorry about that. So, I think it's, important to understand where we are, and the council has looked at its leadership structures repeatedly over the last 12 years. We've gone through austerity, which has included, unfortunately, below needs funding for councils, and we have seen narrowing of leadership structures. And again, a large part of this budget consultation, or these proposals, look at savings, and some of those are again still some management positions wherever we can, but we are quite on a narrow position as a council now. And you do have to strike a balance between, actually, yes, we do need people doing work, but we do need to be able to manage that as well. So there is a need for management across the council as well. So yeah, we need an effective and efficient leadership management structure. And again, I think there was a question about sort of, what happens at full leadership, and we do need to be able to provide a good council, and a council that functions and is best for Monmouthshire. And that does need to mean, that doesn't mean just pay market rate for our carers. It does mean pay the market rate for everybody. If we don't pay a market rate for our employees, we do lose employees, and we can't recruit people that have got the experience that we need to actually take on the task. We're talking well over £100 million worth of finances here, and we do need people who are competent and capable to be able to manage that, just as much as we need to be able to employ people who are competent and capable to deliver the services that we see as residents on a daily basis. So, sorry, was there more to that question as well?
No, that was a complete answer, but Charles has actually submitted 2, Rachel, if you're happy for me to come to the next one,
sure.
please.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so thank you, Charles. The question is, what is the council pension burden? Are final salary pensions still being offered to new employees? Why? When Monmouthshire is one of the poorest counties, do we insist on paying the CEO a similar salary to other counties?
And again, I think I probably did answer that in the last one. It is that piece where you're not going to get a senior leader paying less with the experience that you need. You have to pay the market rate for somebody doing the job at the level that they do. And it is about the experience and the leadership and the ability to manage a full council. And yes, that does command a salary, and it is a salary that is commensurate with other local authorities.
Thank you, Rachel. I will now come to the questions that are coming in thick and fast. Thank you so much to everyone who's watching. It's great that you're getting engaged in the process, and it's submitting your questions. And thank you back to the anonymous person who said he wants to thank MCC, or she has said thanks MCC for putting on the events both face-to-face in this webinar. So whoever that person is, thank you. And the question that that person has asked, so thank you whoever you are, this person says, my question is this: how confident are you that that you can get council members from different parties to agree to the budget proposals and the corporate plan? Thank you. I'm not sure who'd like to take that question, please.
Is that one for you, Marianne?
Think so.
Thank you.
We remain very confident. I think you are alluding to the fact that we are a minority administration since May. But fundamentally, all councillors have one thing in common. We all want the best for Monmouthshire. And we all want Monmouthshire County Council to be effective and serving residents in the best way possible within our means. We are already talking all the time with councillors across all three parties, well, independents, Conservatives and ourselves, both about our future community and corporate plan, but also about the budget. And we will continue those discussions right up to the time that we take the decision in council on March the 9th. So I remain confident that we will work together in a time which is hugely challenging and requires us all to find ways in which we can put aside our differences and work on a consensus for what we know is best for our residents.
Thank you, Leader. Did you have anything to add before I come to the next question? Are we okay to? Yeah, that's great, thank you. This is a point of clarity from this person. I might need this anonymous person to give us some more information. So this person says there's a slight error in the headline budget figures of 500,000. Perhaps if that anonymous person could give us some more information, maybe about what they were referring to there, that would be incredibly helpful. Thank you to that person. We've got another question. This is around green garden waste charges. So this anonymous person says green garden waste charges are increasing from £22 to £50 per bin. I would be concerned that the level of increase would put pressure on individuals to look at alternatives such as fly tipping. Paying more for a recycling service seems a little bit harsh morally and ethically. Who'd like to take that question, please? Perhaps I'll come to the next question while we. Oh, Sarah, would you like to take that? Oh, and Martin's first.
Yes, I'm happy.
Councillor Birch first, and then Councillor Graucutt. Thank you.
I'm happy to take that. I think it's very difficult, isn't it? None of us want to pay more for a service. The green waste, we do all have the option of taking our green waste from the garden to the recycling centre. Or of composting it at home, as many people do. We looked at this long and hard and eventually decided that it was necessary to reframe the service as one that actually recovers the full cost, so that the full cost of providing the service falls on those who use it. In this case, it's not a statutory service, and that enables us to protect the many essential services and keep our recycling centres open. And we looked at a number of options. We don't believe that charging people for the green waste is likely to increase fly tipping. Thank you, Councillor Birch. Councillor Graucutt, do you have something to add to that, please?
I just add, as a user of the service, it doesn't have much to do with schools, which is my political brief, but I'm a very enthusiastic user of the green waste service, and have been since its inception, when of course it was given help by the Welsh Government to get schemes in Monmouthshire and around Wales set up and popular. So a big thank you to the Welsh Government for helping us when the scheme started. That's no longer available to us. So it's not a statutory duty to collect green waste. So Rachel, in her presentation, talked about how we literally went through every line in the budget. And we didn't want to cut any of them, really. But the reality was that here is a non-statutory service. We don't have to deliver it. The subsidy from the Welsh Government had been withdrawn. And if we kept it going at the same rate, we would have been using people who didn't use the service to subsidise those who did. Now, the questioner mentions morals and ethics. The bottom line is that people who didn't use the service, including people who live in flats right up in the air, would have been subsidising those of us who do use the service, and that includes me. So I am quite happy, although I would prefer not to pay the full service because I use it every other week when the bins are emptied.
Thank you very much. The next question from this anonymous person is, can the politicians confirm how they're preparing for more years of unprecedented change instead of a short-term knee-jerk 12-month budget reaction? We're now on our third unprecedented year. Brexit, COVID, war in Ukraine. It's really just business as usual now. So how does this budget deliver on more than just the next 12 months, please?
Thanks very much for that question. I'd say I'd absolutely agree. At moments of crisis, which we've found ourselves in, in fact, the word permacrisis was word of the year last year, I believe. It is not the time to just double down, be reactive or be knee-jerk. Our budget, as well as our community and corporate plan, is based on thinking, what do we want Monmouthshire to look like in 4 years' time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time? What do we have to put in place now in this budget, in our corporate strategy, so that we can move forward to a Monmouthshire which is greener, that is fairer, that we close that equality gap, which is looking at education in a way that we're ensuring that all our kids thrive, that we have a thriving economy for everyone, and we start building the affordable homes that we need. We cannot do that by setting a budget that is merely dealing with crisis. So the criteria that we set, and I'm sure Rachel will come in and say more, was to think about what we need to do to change or transform our services, and which is why we haven't really been talking about cuts. It's about trying to do things differently that can lay the foundations for services that are more effective, more responsive, and more in line in what we need now as we move to the second half of the second decade of the 21st century. Do you want to add anything, Rach?
I think Sarah was actually waiting to come in, Marianne.
If I may, I think Marianne's absolutely right. I mean, we are dealing with, we keep calling it unprecedented, and then there is the next thing that happens. And so we're looking continually at how we can build the resilience of our county and change things for the long term, how we can make best use of all the assets that the council has, and we are driving forward change in quite a lot of services. Coming back to the previous question about staffing, it's not possible to drive forward that kind of rapid change unless we have the people to do it. So while we are taking out some management posts, it's also a challenge to make sure that we have the capacity to drive that rapid change, which brings down costs and drives value.
Councillor Sandals, please.
Thank you. Can I just briefly mention Ukraine? Obviously, that's within the question. And firstly, I would just like to thank all the residents of Monmouthshire that have opened their hearts and mainly their homes in actually, housing and looking after many of the residents. We've got so many residents who have opened their homes. We've got so many volunteers that have built up around the service and, are doing so much for them. they're organising activities, and also, you know, there's so much going on. But also to remind people that the funding of the Ukraine is funded centrally by Welsh Government, so that's not actually impacting on our finances. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are we happy to move on to the next question now, everyone, please? Yeah, thank you. Will all members from all parties please agree to stop divisive behaviour and rhetoric on social media, as it does nothing to promote politics as being clean, fair or attractive to our younger generations?
I'd absolutely agree with this. I'm actually a member of Compassion in Politics, which is a cross-party group that aims to change the way that we do business. I don't think it generates trust, and I don't think it gets us to a point where we are having honest and we are having real and we're having adult conversations with people, but also with our colleagues that are in other parties. I try not to on Twitter, and I'm sad to say that there has been some attacks on members of the council which were unmerited and really, in a sense, unkind. And one of the values that we have in Monmouthshire County Council, which we have as councillors and as staff, is kindness. And for us, I think using social media is to do it in a way where we are kind, we are responsible, and we're also inclusive and responsive. And perhaps Councillor Garrick would like to share her experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've had a bit of profile on this in the last week, where there was some quite unnecessary nastiness on social media kicked off. And I did try to respond to that as positively as possible. Yeah, it has an effect on people. It's, yeah, you see responses. I've had some absolutely beautiful responses that have been really, really supportive from residents, from friends, from further afield. And I've literally had emails from, you know, across the other side of England, from Wales, supporting me. It's been absolutely lovely. But yeah, I think it's important, and it shows a little bit about what we need to do in politics. You know, we do need to talk to each other. I certainly wasn't contacted by anybody who decided that they wanted to use social media negatively towards me beforehand, and yeah, it transpired that there was very good reasons for what those people were seeing that they decided to comment on. It just means, you know, we should treat everybody as human. Everybody here is another member of our community. We all live in Monmouthshire. We all say, and I think I do speak for all of my colleagues here, where we say, yeah, we all stood originally as councillors, not because we wanted to become politicians, not because we feel that it's a gig that we can do. It's because we're all members of the community that genuinely care about our community and feel that it's important that the council has oversight and is run in a way that supports our community, for our community. And that's not about getting into silly, divisive political rhetoric between ourselves and somebody who happens to see something from a different point of view. It's genuinely about working together. And what we want to see is that communication, is people actually speaking to each other like they are human beings that can respect each other, and actually coming to points and conclusions where we can actually work for Monmouthshire. I think it's really important. I think we've already had a question about how we feel, whether we feel that this budget will go through. We're running a full consultation. We're asking every councillor within the county to come and talk to us. My door's been open on this since November. I've held open doors which have been open to every member of the council, regardless of which political party or political opinion they hold. And, you know, I genuinely want people to come, put differences aside, talk to us. And if they see things in this budget that they feel are wrong, just as if you see things in this budget that you feel are wrong, we want to hear that, because we still have opportunity to look at what we're doing, take on board the opinions and the questions from people in our community, not just with our view, but with every single view, to be able to actually formulate and put through a budget that works for our entire community in a time that's incredibly hard.
Sorry, if I could make a very brief comment about our responsibility as local politicians with regards to the use of social media in our schools. I think most of us, if not all of us, are governors of schools, and we will all have heard terrible stories, particularly from older, perhaps secondary school pupils, sending each other messages that are really derogatory, that put each other down, that are sexist, that really do not reflect positively on the community we're trying to build. And I think if these young people can turn around and say, but politicians slag each other off all the time, why can't we? Then we carry some responsibility there. I agree totally with what Mary Ann said. It's a powerful tool, social media, and we use it badly at our peril.
Yes, I would agree. Timmy, chip in. I would agree there. I think obviously we're going to have robust and public debates about how the country should be run, about how national policies affect the situation locally, but it should never be a personal attack or derogatory personal remarks. That's just unkind.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. That's it for the questions we've had submitted. Thank you so much to everybody. I've popped in the chat for people who are viewing a link to our survey. Thank you so much for joining today. It's been a really valuable discussion, and we'd really welcome any additional thoughts and feedback you've got on our survey, please. So please do have your say. That's it for today, and thank
could I
you
add
all
something,
so much.
Abby? I'd just like to extend my thanks also for everybody coming along, and please do fill in the survey. Please do tell your friends to fill in the survey. We have one last face-to-face, and that will be in Abergavenny. So if any of you are online in the Abergavenny area, in my ward, Llanelli Hill, which includes Gilwern or Raglan even, please come. We really do want to speak to as many people as possible and hear your views. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.